58.
50.
Yeah.
So the topic of the day is maybe in the title, I'm sure it would be something cohesive and short, but
Mm. Once you have time to process it, we can refine that. In the middle, we'll wing it.
yeah. Well, no, to begin with, it's just kind of a description. So the idea of, and this is what the goal is to take through the propagation of different dimensionalities and and how that happens and basically how dimensions get created and then how then we experience our perceived reality through the dimension of our choice, right? So I know that's kind of like an overlay, but that's kind of the goal behind the podcast, and I'm hoping you'll be able to chime in and ground me into Earth's interpretation of
For
things.
for the layperson, what do you mean by dimension?
Um, Rules of engagement, right? That's what dimensions are. Is um right. So as the source that has an inception of an idea of an experience, right? And then propagates itself out to facilitate experience. And our whole point of our being is to experience. Um, then then dimensionalities create different playgrounds for different sets of experiences, right? So our let's say I will refer to Earth as three-dimensional realm, but like in our three-dimensional realm, we have very defined sets of experiences. And so therefore the playground is very defined or very tuned in into a specific frequency. And so then we walk around playing in this playground, believing the sets of the given, right, the standards, then become our reality and we propagate, therefore, its truth.
Right. And in that what we call the 3D realm, a lot of things matter. Furnace filters really matter. The stock market really matters, and all that stuff.
Well, yeah, and so we'll get into this, but in the 3D, we get to dive into the nuance in order to build for us as a human species the densest possible frequency to experience. And then we can kind of go through maybe the stages of that. I mean, I'm not gonna necessarily going to go through all the variations, and I don't necessarily have the answer to all the variations yet. But what I know is I know the frequency of the source, and then what it is like to be in the point of null, and then basically um, kind of like dissemination of and propagation of rules of engagement that then facilitate different stages of experience or awareness, or in our case, lack thereof, which is interesting, right? This is maybe I'll kind of this in a review is a lot of the initial frequencies exist. In all the esoteric teachings, people say like this linear progression, right? They say there's this linear progressions, and you imagine them being closer to the source, therefore they are aware of the source more, right? And it is kind of true, but it's not necessarily in a linear progression. It's more of an like moment progression, right?
Like a quantum leap.
Yeah, well, it's a maybe, let's say, from earthly understanding, state of quantum positioning where everything just is, right? And so in that state, you're more likely, right? The closer you are to the is, you're more likely to be closer to the awareness of the point of null. That is the source, right? Um, yeah, and so with them, their perception to experience is how can I experience the experience of the source or the divine or God or whatever you want to call it as a representation thereof. And then they go on into the playground of creation from the largest, matter of scales. Um, and then interpreting divine through that. And then in our world, we're completely shut off from even the idea that we are here facilitating the experience of the divine through interpretation, right? And so therefore the experience is just, we're kind of like Wild West is a really good term for it.
Right. No,
Um,
it can really be a shit show sometimes
yeah, but it's
if you let
because
it.
it's because we are, I would say from some standpoint, for those who are not awakened even to the idea that there's such thing as an awakening, it is the ultimate experience of not knowing. And then thus, you know, from the interpretation of the human incarnation as a soul self, believing that you don't know, right? Your soul self is always aware. But your rudimentary, I guess, form of operation without the allowance into the belief of awareness. Right. And that's kind of where it becomes really a shit show, is you don't even allow yourself to believe that there is such thing as awareness.
Right. Awareness and a choice in the matter.
Hmm. Well, yeah, right. Everything's a choice.
Yeah.
But that you think there's this is it, right?
Yeah. This is it. This is these are the cards I've been dealt or whatever.
Yeah, but to that extent, you're really, really married to that reality that everything is really important. The the I don't know, the color of your skin really, really matters. The type of car you drive really, really matters. Which side of the country you live on really, really matters. What side of the world, like all of these things like that define you as a
Right.
human. I mean, heck, it gets down to the color of your toothpaste matters.
Right.
The type of toilets you have matters. You just
Right.
get lost in the nuance.
Right. And then it matters so much that it's worth, arguing about and fighting over.
Mm. So yeah, so maybe this is the good time to bring it in. I brought this in the previous podcast, but I will retouch it just because I had a different interpretation of it a couple of nights ago. But the at the source, at the point of the source, you exist in this form that really feels like home. Like it's so peaceful and it's so restful, and it is the ultimate place to rest. Like I have been resting in it for the last 2 days, and it has been, um, it's been really nice. Um, and then the way we then come into this form, into this body, and then I decide to be Tanya in this physical reality, is the propagation into decisions or parameters, whatever you want to call it, then would build the narrative of me, right? And, so sooner or later, you will be able to feel how it feels to go from the source, the null, right? The point of rest, and then progress itself into this form through conscious awareness that the choice is what makes that dive. How deep you go is the number of definitions that you hold and derive into your choice of self.
Yeah, I think that's key. Is the number of definitions and how strongly married to them is a really good way to word it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
because we all have definitions. At the base level, I am a human. And it's like, wow, how I'm really married to that. How am I not? Right?
Yeah.
But I am, you know, I don't know what
Yeah. Yeah.
a man, a white man
Do
in
you, so
Kentucky.
in your opinion, do you think I'm a human is at the core or not?
Um, I don't know. Can you think of something more fundamental?
So
I
I
mean,
think at the bottom, so right, definitions, you can correlate this. Definition is equivalent to density, and it is equivalent to frequency. They're
right.
all interchangeable.
And definitions don't have to start with I am. It could be this is or that is or he is or she is. But I think
Yeah.
the self definitions are the strongest and maybe most dense.
Yeah, so the lowest form of density, the thing that drags us down the most and gets us to sink into this belief of structure, right? So I'm not talking about from the awareness standpoint. Like if you have zero awareness, right? Your definitions would be fear and pain and suffering, right? The kind of like on the David Hawkins scale of those lower emotional things, to where you're not even aware there's such thing as awareness because you're currently lost in the awareness of fear or in the awareness of suffering or awareness of tragedy. Whatever that fear-based thing is, it gets you to sink in and then basically builds the strongest anchor. It builds the strongest anchor to stay here, right? Because that's the definition of your life. My life is fear. My life is grief. My life is judgment. My life is tragedy. Whatever. Um, and then I guess step one would be to go into the idea of awareness to start to densify that. And like for the last 50 something episodes, all we've been talking about how to densify that initial layer, right? But then at some point, what comes in is your definition of self, such as, remember we brought this into also in the past, like, who are you, right? And you would say, oh, well, I'm a computer engineer, or I'm a white male, or I am a Kentuckian, or I am an American, or I am whatever.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm a human.
I'm a
Right? It's like
human.
it's hard
I'm
for
a father.
I'm an earthling. It's hard for people to go beyond that. It's hard. That I think to a lot of people that is the most general statement you can get that would apply to everybody.
I'm
I
an
am a
earthling.
human, or I am an earthling, or something. And it's like, while that is true, is that who you are?
Yeah. So human
that-
human and earthling is over here. To begin with, we're lost down here.
Yeah.
Right. So so that is the progression. Progression is we're over here in pain and suffering, and we don't even understand that this is the awareness that we're drawing into. And then sooner or later you go, wait, I'm actually becoming defined that I am one with suffering. I am in pain. I am in fear. And so first you almost have to become aware and let go of those lower density emotions before but there has to be some kindling of awareness to where you realize that you're becoming identified as somebody who has fear or somebody who has pain.
I think this is really closely related. I don't remember what book it was, but there it is, if I can find it. The author talked about how there's this progression of our identification. It's No Boundaries. That's the name of the book. I don't know who wrote it.
Michael Singer.
Was this Michael Singer book?
No Boundaries?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, did you read it too?
No.
Oh. I was wondering if it was Singer, but I'm like, I don't want to say the wrong name.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure so.
And it's like, oftentimes people start off, it's like, what is you? Right? Is this skin me? Is this liver me? Is this brain me? Most people would say yes, but is this microphone me? Most people would say no. But at the root level, it starts off like, well, I am only the part of my psyche that I accept and I like, which he calls the ego. And eventually you get into, you grow and you're like, well, there's parts of my mind that, like the shadow part that, I don't quote like. And so then your whole mind becomes, you can graduate into that. I am my whole mind. And then it's maybe I am my whole body. There are a lot more granular steps that he has, but it's like, okay, well, if I am my body and then I eat an apple, is that this apple is not part of me and then it becomes part of me? Maybe when it's digesting, maybe there's all kinds of we want to have this boundary of what is me and what is not me, and basically everyone thinks everything inside the skin and maybe the hair sticking out too is me, and everything else is not me. And when we define it like that, it becomes a battle, because where there's a boundary, there's a battle.
Well, that in that case, he's just simply describing the binary nature of our programming.
Right.
We're designed to exist and then not exist. And the definition of self is the definition of existence.
The graduate level of that is realizing that you are saying one with or the same as everyone and everything in the universe. There's a lot of different ways to word that.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and a lot of different religions have a lot of different ways to word that. We're all one of the one source. We're all fractals of the light. Word that how
Mhm.
you will. But if you've done meditation, there's a chance you've touched on that, on feeling what that really means. It's one thing to hear it and but to actually feel what that really means.
Yeah.
And then there's like, oh, you couldn't possibly, start a war or swat a fly because i- it's all you. It doesn't even make sense at that point.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything he says. Did he I when you're reading his book and you're in that, frequency transmission, basically that's all what all books are. So, and then you're receiving the essence of him touching the point of null, and then he's transmitting through the reading, ideally you're reading and not listening to it on audio, uh, then he's transmitting how he touched it, his understanding of that touch.
I read it on a actual Kindle. And I remember this so vividly. At one point, I'm just reading it, and he's talking about, this is fairly early in the book, how at one point, hopefully you get to feel like you're one with everything. And there for a minute, I'm laying in bed reading. I was one with the Kindle, the little device, and it was just this overwhelming emotional influx of oneness, and I'm like, oh, it all makes sense. I've got it. It all makes sense. And then it went away, and I'm like, no, come back. I've come back. The Kindle, come back. And I'm like holding the Kindle. I'm like, nothing has changed in the, you know, I'm still laying in bed reading this book, but I'm like, I just didn't feel it anymore. I felt it, I don't know, 30 seconds or so, and it was absolutely magical. And every now and then I get that, but that was, oh my gosh, I was just so connected to this, quite an old Kindle at that too,
Yeah, but at that point you were connected to that point of being.
right? And
The
it was, it didn't have to be the Kindle. It could have been the pillow or the
Yeah, yeah.
cat or whatever. That was
Yeah.
just the object that happened to be in front of me at the time. But it was like the universe was like, "Oh, you want to know what this is like? Here you go. We're gonna pick something trivial,
Yes.
and and it saying that I loved it is not even the right. That I loved the Kindle is not the right thing. I mean, yes, I did, but it's like it's a whole different definition of love. It is like I was the Kindle and the Kindle was me. It was like, I don't know, a bunch of mushrooms or something. I don't know. It was wild, but it was amazing. And it's like, I just hope everybody could feel that in their lives.
No, I think that's the goal of the universal consciousness is everybody actually gets to feel it. And then depending on how much you want to admit this to yourself, we've talked about this before, you end up chasing it. Because something is missing.
Yeah.
The universe lets you know, oh wait, here's what's missing. And you know that is the most point of truth. You already know that that is the essence of you. And deep down, you're just basically, if you don't admit it to yourself, you want more of it. You want to connect with it.
You're a seeker.
Sure.
That's the term, isn't it? For people on a spiritual journey,
Um,
oftentimes.
you're a seeker until you realize what is it that you're seeking. And then and after you realize that, oh no, I'm just trying to remember my truth.
Right. I mean, that goes back to my enlightenment is, at the bottom of the big hole of shit. It's there. You're born with it. It was already there.
Yeah,
And I just happened to get a glimpse of it.
yeah, you're a seeker until you realize that there's nothing to seek. And now there's just time for you to remember.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the difference between, instead of having to go out and find it in the world, in the maze, in the jungle, in the mountains, in the caves, it's like, oh, you have it. You just need to uncover it. You just need to uncover it's wrong. You need to stop hiding it.
Well,
You mean to remember you have it
yeah, but
and let it shine.
this is what I want to. This is what I want the episode to be. I want to really hammer in onto the idea that hiding it simply means holding definitions. That's it, right? In order for you to actually feel the essence of the reality that you are looking for, let's say, or you remember it but can't quite figure out what the heck it is, or, if there's nagging and then there's these memories that coming in and you're just you just want to start to experience what you already know as the truth, even though it is not the truth in the form of you right now. The way to do that is it's sooner or later after you recognize that the density of you is holding you back through the programming of your choices into trauma. But part of that is realizing that all of that is being held and you choosing that as a definition. And everything that is, let's say, holding us back or keeping us blind or keeps us on this side of the veil is the number of definitions or number of circumstances that we choose to believe in.
That's well said. That kind of sums it up.
Done. That's it. I mean, shortest podcast ever.
All right.
20 minutes in. Right. And so that's what it comes down to, is that we, in the experience that I am keep on, I guess, going through, I feel myself transmute my consciousness into various planes of interpretation until I take on enough definitions to become Tanya. And sometimes it's like, oh, I just don't want any more definitions. And there's this very innocent part of me that goes, okay, can we just stop with definitions now? Because this is enough. Like, because it's very heavy. Like if you start lightening your load and you start going up in frequency, this is a very dense frequency. And it's really hard to climb out of it, especially with, Earth as a set of definitions, right? It's because at some point, sooner or later, right, you would have to unravel basic definitions of operations.
Right. I think it feels like Earth 2024 is denser than it has been since I've been alive. Right now feels like if you want to sink into it, there's a lot more to sink into.
Well, the polarity has become
for all the wonderful things that, the internet and, being connected has given us, it has let anyone and anything anywhere go, here's some density. I'm going to
Yeah.
share it on the Twitters or the Instagrams or the Facebooks
Yeah.
or the Snapchat if you're younger than us.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
But we've talked about this. In order for you to become aware, right, and the imbalance or disposition of self, you have to see it from a very extreme spread.
What
Right?
an extreme spread.
Like you have to see, oh my gosh, I will put human judgment on this. So realize that there's a way to look at this without human judgment. But in the human form, you go, oh, here's the pile of shit, and here's where it feels good. And then you almost need to feel this pull in between, like, wait, here's where reality is. Like, here's where common peace is. And then here's like the densest of the density.
And that is not my position versus their position. That is
All
a step
positions.
above the positions.
All positions. That's the thing.
It's not
all positions.
Those whatever. I don't even want to pick pick a party, oh, they believe that and I believe this, so I just want to stay away from that. It's not that. It's maybe they believe that and you believe this. That's fine. But the whole us versus them, removed from that.
Yes,
That's the
this
difference.
goes back to the trinary nature of our
Yes.
fight between the enemy, the resistance, and the victim, or the empire. I guess
You can still have your opinions and beliefs and whatever, but it's being removed from the entire idea that there is a us versus them. There is a debate to be had. There is a fight to be fought.
Yes.
It's
So when I say that those dumps, right? The dumps
is not them. The dumps is us versus them.
Well, the dumps is anything out there that goes into the trinary nature of existence, where somebody's a good guy, somebody's a bad guy, and somebody's out there to right the wrong. As long as there's somebody out there to right the wrong, and you have an opinion about righting the wrong, or making your point across because you're right and they're wrong, or whatever, you're at the point of resistance. So that is the dumping ground. That is the densest of the density. And so when you said like 2024 Earth is like, wow, yeah, is because
there's a lot of it feels like there's more of those. If you want to go looking for them,
yes,
or even if you don't want to go looking for them,
yes,
they're there.
Yeah, but in order for a rocket to shoot into space, right, you need a lot of fire, right? And then only with a lot of force down can you go up, right? And that's what's happening. The density, the turmoil of all of this binary split of reality between ones and zeros, right, is reaching, it's kind of like a point of collapse, let's say, in order to be able to have those who choose to propel themselves outside of that frequency to go up and go up higher. So it's kind of like almost like a base
trampoline.
Like a bounce jump,
springboard.
Yeah, springboard jump. Right.
Yeah.
The awareness of this down, right? So realize
it's like an emotional bottom.
Well,
you go, oh, this is really bad. Boing. I don't want that anymore.
Yeah. So as you do that, right, you can choose to go, oh, well, right. If you're already in some point of awareness of like, wait, I want something different. I am being called into that openness. I am something else. And this is somehow doesn't make sense. All of this doesn't make sense. If you're already there, and I think this podcast is probably for those people, then you would go, okay, then how do I transcend the structure? How do I transcend this reality? And you transcend this reality by seeing this trinary nature of resistance and victim and that gameplay. So you can use that as a springboard to bounce yourself off, right? Because think about this. Every day you have countless of opportunities to sink back down and get dragged into the trinary nature of things. Yeah. But if you don't, then by default, what you're doing is it gives you energy to jump back up.
Right.
Do you see what I mean? You get the momentum.
It can suck you in or bounce you back up.
Yeah. But the more time, so imagine each opportunity of this trinary nature, whether or not you sink into it and become one into the density, or you bounce off of it, is actually the propellant that causes you. So if you think about it, if you're giving an opportunity, so each experience is an opportunity, and you can so you start like, okay, here's an experience, right? And you go, okay, look, I'm starting to, like whatever.
I think you can feel it.
You can feel it. You can feel yourself being triggered by like whatever, right? Today, I will give an example. This is a silly example. This is how awareness of this works. Annabelle, our daughter, I take her to school every morning. And so today she had her outfit on, and then she's into one of those stages where the outfits are, whatever, right? There's a lot of pickiness about like what works, what doesn't work, and which is fine, right? She's just becoming a teenager. And so she had a hoodie on that she has had for a very long time. And all of a sudden she went, oh, this hoodie is too small. I'm not wearing it today. I'll just wear your hoodie. And so she likes to wear my hoodie. And then I automatically went into a trigger point of like, oh, my gosh, no, it's not too small. Look, it's totally not small. It's actually an adult size small. And it's like, if anything, it's oversized. And so I went into that basically scarcity mindset to where like, oh, look, why are you not going to wear this perfectly normal piece of clothing? And so I'm totally immediately, yes, I saw myself just dipping right down, not arguing with her, but just trying to point out to her in my raised awareness step of a trauma way that this hoodie is still okay. And I'm like, look, I put the hoodie on and I'm like, it even fits me. And I was in a sales pitch of why this hoodie was okay. And then I was sitting there and I go, oh my gosh, what an influx, a ginormous influx for me, triggered by this 10-year-old who all of a sudden decides that this hoodie is a bunch of shit at 7:00 in the morning. And now, is going to, forgo it. And then I get a trigger.
Right.
Based on whatever pain bodies I could sink down into.
This hoodie is too small probably actually means I don't want to wear this today.
But, if that's a decision she makes forward into the future, then I extrapolate this into a disaster and all of a sudden Annabelle is one less hoodie. But of course, my personal pain body and trigger is, based on growing up poor, is lack of resources, lack of clothing, not even having the clothing. And with her, the trigger I'm having is she rejects 99.9% of clothing I buy her. And so her closet is empty, not because we don't have the means, but because she doesn't accept anything as a potential clothing.
Right. It's not empty, but she won't wear half of it.
She won't wear half of it, but I also keep on buying more and she rejects it all. Like we spend more time returning things than not, right? So to me, right, so in that awareness of that springboard, right, that is a trigger for me. Like, oh, look, I grew up without any clothes, quite literally. And so therefore, that's the last thing I want my children to have. And so then, okay, guess what I have done? I have, as a parent, made our style of living to where I can buy them unlimited clothing. And then therefore, they will always have clothes to wear. And they will always have shoes. And they will always have food and unlimited everything, right?
Right.
So that's my overcompensation. But the second she brings up like, oh, this perfectly good hoodie is no longer fits me,
right,
which is not the truth. Therefore, my trigger just gets activated, right? And I probably was trying to sell her for at least a minute and a half, maybe a minute, before she slammed the door on me after I was trying to showcase to her.
See, it still fits. It fits
no,
fine.
I literally took my clothes off. I took this thing off. I put the hoodie on and I was trying to model to her. The hoodie still fits me. Therefore, as a 10-year-old, it will for sure fit her.
Right.
And that's how pure unawareness goes.
There's a lot of things that, are too big or too small. They're really, I think she just uses that as an excuse for, I don't want to wear this, or I don't like this, or I don't want to wear this today, or whatever.
No, but
I know what you're saying. I know exactly what you're saying.
Her action is irrelevant to the trigger that I was having, and the sales pitch that I was going through, trying to sell her the hoodie is perfectly fine. And then in my mind, I went, okay, wait, if she doesn't wear the hoodie, could I wear the hoodie?
It's a perfectly good hoodie.
I know.
It probably cost $15,
$20.
Oh my gosh, we need to save this.
But then I'm like, oh, but it has stitch on it. I don't know.
Stitch.
I'm like, I don't know if I can pull stitch off as a 40-year-old woman. Anyway, so that is an example of how the dive starts, right? You're being propelled into whatever the trauma scenario that you're choosing to participate in. And then how quickly then you decide to use that as a propellant to bounce back up, right? And that is definition. How you transcend the definition is you make points of awareness of what is it that I'm doing, right? To begin with, right? Out of the trauma. But then later into, wait, what is it? Why am I holding on to this? What point of me causes me hold on to this concept? Am I married to the fact that I'm human? Am I married to the fact that I'm an earthen? Am I married to the fact that I live in Milky Way galaxy? And that is the limit of my existence? Do you know what I mean? So, you can see how it can just inch itself up.
These definitions are limiting by definition.
It's constructing our nature of
Yeah.
reality.
Because if I am an earthling, then I'm probably limited to Earth.
Yeah.
If I am, an American, then I'm, kind of limited to
Whatever the
America, whatever that
definitions the
means.
American holds for you. Right.
Back to the triggering. We watched that Bruce Lipton special on Gaia, and he was talking about how when we're conscious, when we're using was it the prefrontal cortex, the the part of our brain that only humans have, the apes and whatever don't have a prefrontal cortex, and therefore are incapable of this advanced thinking, I guess. Anyway, that's according to his theory. That's where like real awareness comes from. And if you're operating in in that thinking mode, you're capable of great creativity, great love, great expression, and all this stuff. But it isn't easy, and it takes effort to stay there. But what happens is we end up either getting distracted or or just mindlessly falling back into kind of an autopilot mode, which is not prefrontal cortex, which is, I don't know, some other part of the brain. And it's just autopilot. But the problem is autopilot comes along with a whole bunch of baggage from childhood, from all the traumas, from whatever. And so, when you were triggered into that, you were no longer, in high functioning prefrontal cortex mode.
Survival mode.
You're in, yes, it's survival mode.
Mhm.
It's some sort of very, I don't know if that's the limbic system. I don't remember. Whatever it is. That shift from, I'm in control of my destiny. I'm running the ship. My, if there is a me in the brain, that's the prefrontal cortex. That's, what should be running the ship, because that's what makes the good decisions, or at least can make the good decisions. Now, limbic system's all fine and good. If you're being chased by a bear, that's great. Something moves, you just, instinctively react to it, whatever. It's not that. It's that shouldn't be driving the ship, captaining the ship for in 2024 Earth.
Yeah. But you will have these triggers throughout the day.
The trigger sends you right back into that, because that is the easy automatic response, and it always has been. And it's got all that baggage of, well, when I was young, I didn't have the clothes, and this reminds me of that, and it just triggers that, and you're completely snapped out of good thinking into bad thinking.
Yeah, but from this standpoint, you're choosing to dive into a different density mode of being.
That's the thing. It is a choice. It may not feel like a choice at the moment. It feels like a reaction instead of a choice, but it is a choice. And
It's a choice.
you can catch it, because it feels wildly different than the good times do.
Yeah. No, after I got the door slammed on me and I walked away and I changed back into this shirt. I thought, oh my gosh, look how quickly her one word of like, oh look, it doesn't fit me anymore. I'm done, right? And then her energetic frustration behind that statement, right, triggered me into my own, obviously, remnants survival mode of like, wait, I got to sell her on like this item of clothing that she already approved of, and then therefore somehow I can salvage this. So she at least has like 4 hoodies instead of 3 hoodies, right? In fact, none of the hoodies that she wears, she just only wears my hoodie now. Which I'm like, I wonder if part of it was like, well, wait, is this about my hoodie? I'm like, no, it's just about having clothing.
Right. No, it's I mean, I didn't even grow up in any sort of real scarcity, but I still it is difficult to let go of stuff because what if we need it? What if?
Yeah.
Oh, this cable is kind of frayed and everything, and maybe it's a fire hazard. But what if all the other 10,000 cables we have uh, d- disappear, and this is the only way we have left to charge a phone, to charge a phone that we don't have anymore? We should probably. Oh, I have a box for those.
No, there's a lot of behavior, right, that comes out of that numbness, right? You're numbed off to the reality because you're in some sort of bracketed aspect of reality that does not exist right now, will never exist, but you're potentially afraid of its existence.
the The fact that most things now use USB-C is both good and bad because it's good in that it's like, okay, all we need is a handful of USB-C cables and everything is taken care of. You know, I guess
Yeah.
other than our phones, but almost everything is just USB-C. And but the bad thing is a couple things that don't. And then I'm like, shoot, I've only got one or two of these cables. I really gotta keep track of these. These really can't get eaten by the cats. So it both soothes the pain body, but then exacerbates in some cases.
Yeah, but that's, our awareness once
No,
again, right?
I've noticed that. I've noticed. Okay, USB-C cables. I've got plenty of them,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, but that's the thing is you have countless and countless opportunities to either sink in into density over such thing as cables or hoodies, right? Or you can use it as a springboard to bounce up your awareness up higher. And if you do enough of those springboards of up and down, right? You start to recognize what it is like to start dropping definitions, right? The definition circumstances will just start to dissipate, right? That is how you build the awareness into dropping definitions. And then if you start to drop definition, then your entire baseline of functionality basically starts to just bump up higher and higher and higher, right? And then, just to piggyback of our last podcast, but that the shift, the shift that we're going through for those who are choosing to start to experience, shifted realities. That is how the de-densification works. That is how shedding off density works, is to start dropping definition from practical standpoint.
so what does that look like? How do you drop the definition of I am a woman, I am a mother, or whatever.
The easiest one to drop would be the dense ones, the one we talked about
I'm
for
a
the last
victim.
year. I'm a victim,
Yeah,
right? Like, oh look, that's the easiest awareness, like because everything kind of stems out of that, right?
right. And that is a very obviously negative one too.
Yeah. But like I'm a mother, you're like, okay, well, that's not
What's wrong
necessarily
with that?
negative, right? But when you define yourself as a mother or as a father, right? What is it then you are doing? What do you think you're doing? Like if you were to define yourself as a father, what is it you're doing?
I mean, I think it puts constraints on you, on what you can and can't, should and shouldn't do, how you should and shouldn't behave. And I'm not saying that I'm not even saying that those constraints are right, wrong, good, or bad, but it does constrain you, right? Um,
Well, one, I think the role of a mother on as an earthen constitute rules of engagement. Like, right? Constraints being one of them. But two is like, oh, well, I am a caretaker. I take care of things, right? I'm a nurturer, right? And instead of being a nurturer, you define yourself as a nurturer.
yeah,
Those are two
that's the
different
difference.
things, right?
Is you can still play the role. You can still do those things. You can still act that character without defining yourself as such.
Yeah. So like when parents get lost, like the empty nester syndrome, right? Like we're like coming on halfway point of that, I guess.
In theory, we'll have one somewhat. somewhat gone, somewhat independent next year.
Yeah, but he's already kind of like not here most of the time. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so what it's easier for me to realize now, like being on the precipice of this change, is that most of the parents who go through the empty nester syndrome define themselves in that role, and they got lost in the role. They got lost in the all the things that go into that gameplay. Instead of playing the game, oh, I drive my kids, and I know this is gonna sound rude, but I drive my kids to soccer and I'm a soccer mom. Instead of playing that game and going, oh look, I'll be playing a soccer mom game today. No, they're
Right.
seeking comfort and
Yeah, yeah.
definition in being the soccer mom.
Because if you are if you are a soccer mom, then you're not a soccer mom. Then if you are a soccer mom, then you're not whatever else there is other than a soccer mom. Sure, obviously you are. Obviously you go to work and you I don't know, whatever it is you do. You do have a life outside of taking kids to soccer, I hope. Um, but if that is so central and to what you do, so at the core of who you quote who you are, that's how you define yourself, then everything else falls by the wayside.
Well, you're right. You're defining structures into this artificial concept that the universe. That's not. I'm sorry, not universe. That you have chose to draw
Right.
out of a conceptual interpretation of reality, and you're sunk into it.
Right.
Right. You're like
Yeah.
you literally married the concept of being a soccer mom.
Yeah.
I'm not actually giving any one example. I'm just saying this is how
Right.
structure works.
So
Being a mom is like, oh, I did this, in the way, I guess back in my mid 20s when we first had our child, I kind of sunk into this concept with Aiden, right? Like, oh, what do you do? Well, oh, okay, you make sure your children excel in math, and you make sure that if school is not providing enough, then you sign them up for extracurricular in math, and and then you sign them up for baseball, and then you
yeah,
sign them up for soccer, and you sign them up for uh,
basketball. Don't forget basketball.
right, and like and all of that was a complete shit show. I'm not saying for others, but for me,
Right. And
because it
partially
was all done because here's the things you
and
do.
partially and for him too, because I don't think he enjoyed all those things.
It was a shit show because I was trying to draw a definition of like, wait, what does being a mom look like? And I was just trying to go onto the universe because I did not know who I am and what it is I wanted inside, intuitively inside for my child. All right. And I was just trying to grasp on definitions in order to stick myself somewhere because, right, intuitively, I don't belong or I don't fit in or I sink into the concept of motherhood. And then I'm trying to make that work from this greater clusterfuck of shit that is what being the mother is.
Right. And it's like, we all want the best for our kids, and we think, oh well, we'll just, throw a bunch of sports against the wall like spaghetti and hope that one of them sticks, a bunch of activities. What is it, because they don't necessarily know what they enjoy and all these things, but maybe they do. Maybe they don't actually want to do them or enjoy them. Aiden, for the most part, I think enjoy doing stuff. Doesn't matter what it is. Annabelle's not a big fan of doing extracurricular stuff. I was not a fan of doing extracurricular stuff. I wanted to do stuff, but I didn't want to be committed into it, which was my issue. And I think it's hers. Aiden's more easygoing with that, but there's in that where I was going in that trap. There's some collateral damage of the child who may end up getting forced into things that they don't want to do. Um, yeah. So instead of I am a mother, I am this, I am that. It's more like I enjoy this, I do this, I this is how I make money. This is what I do for fun. This is whatever. I think that's a better way to look at it. Is I
Yeah.
do these things instead of I am this definition.
Right. Well, to begin with, you just if you cannot drop the earthling situation out of the picture, and you go, okay, well, I am a human being, and I have this body. Then the first step of awareness is that, okay, well, I'm here to have an experience. Earth is about experience, right? That is an easy thing for you to identify with. And then the rudimentary understanding of that experience is you're having an experience. You're not marrying an experience,
Yeah.
right? And so if you're not at the point where you can drop earthing as a concept to begin with, just realize what can your soul actually recognize within you. It is that you are here to have an experience of this lifetime or of this reincarnation, or of this interpretation of me as Tanya. And then what that is me, that within itself is me choosing to come here to have an experience. And that is within itself, let's say, we will leave that, could be the definition, right? If you're not able to go all the way out and drop all definitions, just go to this point of definition. Hold that definition. The only definition I can hold is I am here as Tanya, as a soul, having the earthly experience. And that is the only definition that I will hold for the next month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. And then just see what that does. See the second you sink into something that drags you deep down to that trinary nature of existence where you're trying to compensate for something, overcome something, or, not be traumatized by something, but make sure your children don't experience something that you experience, which is, what most of the motherhood and the fatherhood type of actions are actually just that. Us living our trauma and making sure our children don't experience our trauma.
I had this, or I didn't have this, so I'm sure going to make sure that my kids do. Or I did have this and I didn't like it, so there's no way that my kids are going to have that. It's like flip-flop back and forth, generation to generation of.
Yeah, but the only thing that propagates, is generational trauma. Well, what is generational trauma? Is any one person, any one father or any one mother refusing to acknowledge their personal pain body as a child, their personal wounded child as a being, and let go of that.
Right.
Let go of that child. Just allow that child to go. Just say, you know what? I give you love. I give you light. I acknowledge the pain that you have felt. Now it's time for you to go. And then you basically put a stop to generational ancestral trauma that basically just flips up itself back and forth. And then you allow your kids to have a pure restart.
There's I've seen it on Instagram. It's like a little cartoon where it's like got 5 generations lined up, and it's got the old one yelling at the next one, his son, and he's yelling at the next one, his son, and he's yelling at the next one, his son. But that one, like, has his like back to the ancestors, like protecting him, and he's just like holding a flower to his sons, and it's like it stops here, type of a thing.
And that's emotional why?
Huh?
And that's emotional why?
I was just like, you gotta. Because if it feels like that's the responsibility is to be that, that line of.
Yeah, there might be a wrong way to look at there. You're crying, right? Just when we watched the If, and so the experience that I had for my birthday is kind of in the remnants of this, right? I was guided to do like another harmonic opening of my body. I don't know if it worked for you or not. I don't think it did. And then after that, we watched If, right? And then what If opens within you is the childhood pain body that nobody has ever let go or actualized into themselves. And then basically, if you're in there in the If, and if you're crying, that is a perfect opportunity for you to acknowledge that here's what this is that generational trauma, and then the father is there to protecting you, turning the back.
I didn't get that.
You don't get that. So you're crying because you wish somebody did that for you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. It's not me doing it to the next one. It's that I didn't get that.
You didn't get that. That is the healing that needs to happen in order for it not to go forward. You don't actually need to do anything to Aiden at all. You just
Yeah.
need to acknowledge your own pain.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It
There's a
does.
huge
It does.
difference.
Yeah.
That is how the generational trauma does not get propagated. Is there's nothing you need to do for your children at all. You don't need to shield them from the world. You just need to shield them from yourself. Right?
Yeah.
And yourself is right. Like if you interpret that, you turning the back and you shielding him from the shadows of your father and your grandfather and whatever. It's not that. It is acknowledging your own personal pain that you wish deep down inside you had someone who had your back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that, that is basically what happened to me whenever I let my child go on my birthday. Right. And birthday is perfect time. Like, it's kind of like, uh, universe wraps everything in the perfect bow.
Yeah.
It is just the most perfect.
It's a good time for a rebirth cycle.
Well, yeah, but the birthday is when you feel your connection to all the essence of self all the way back. You're allowed you to be um uncollapsed time version of being. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
All the portals between all versions of your progression, however many years you have lived, actually open, and you're able to see through the entire length of your lifetime, because cyclical nature is the time is at the collapse at the point of birth, right? And with me, thankfully, the fall equinox lines up with actually around the time of my birth.
Yeah.
um
Which is, I don't think it's a coincidence.
yeah, but it's because in that point of transitory phase like a quantum positioning phase, um and then also like choice into your life phase of your life, it's both. You're able to transcend and open um this line of reality where you're able to let go and cleanse and reshuffle and kind of recalibrate. And so yeah, that's the kind of the gift that I had from the universe. But that's what it is, right? Watching If, like, obviously on purpose, and then doing the harmonic opening of the body was also on purpose. And so then the shielding that you are doing is actually solely going within yourself. It has nothing to do with your dad. It has nothing to do with his dad. It has nothing to do with the dad before that. It has to do with what is the pain body that you're feeling within yourself, that you're crying over, that you did not have someone to give you something.
Yeah.
And the reason why If movie is basically so perfect for it is because that's what it represents. It represents the child within us that feels hurt, unseen, unloved, and we wished someone was there for us. And it doesn't even matter the details. Like, that's the thing, is you
Yeah.
lived in the United States of America and I lived in Ukraine, but we're both crying over the pain body of
Right.
our unprocessed trauma as children.
And I guess most of us we miss that, and we naively think I need to. It's I think most people will either take whatever they got from their parents and send it down another generation, or take whatever they got from their parents and do 180-degree opposite, kick it down. And there's no what you just described of
Awareness.
awareness and just going, wait a minute, let's just let it go and disconnect from that.
Yeah. But what does disconnecting from that look like? Like, what is it not, right? What is it that if that Instagram reel or whatever the heck it was is right, eh, is teaching you shielding and not.
Yeah, it's teaching you 180-degree opposite, right? Which,
Do you think it depends how you interpret that?
I guess it depends how you interpret that. I mean, in that example, yes, all this yelling should be stopped and it should turn into love. Yes, but it's more. Any one case is obviously super nuanced and everything, but then again, is it?
No,
It's not.
it's all the same.
It's all the same.
I mean, we're living the same story on Earth.
Yeah.
just without personal interpretation. And there's only so many stories, and we just all pipe into it thinking that we're somehow
Right.
special. No, we're just all living
It's
the
all the same
same trauma
story.
and drama.
And instead of, you know, you didn't have clothes or food, and I didn't have, you know, love or attention or whatever. And it's like we grew up missing X, and that causes us to do Y. And so if we do Z to our kids, there you go. That's the story. And you just
Mhm.
pick an X, pick a Y, and pick a Z.
It's the trinary nature of things,
Yeah.
right? You felt like a victim as a child. Somebody else was the empire, purposefully or not, but you interpret somebody else, and you wanted someone to be there as the resistance to fight for you and to protect you and make you feel
Yeah.
loved and safe.
I mean, do you think all kids feel like the victim?
Mm, Yeah, I mean, if they were raised, if they came into Earth, for the experience of the timeline that you and I experienced, yes. Aiden, I would say to some extent, like Annabelle is somewhere else. Like, so Aiden is what generation is he? He's generation Z?
Or is he, wait, millennial? I
No,
don't
we're
know.
millennials and generation X, but he's a generation Z, right? And then Annabelle is alpha. And so,
Names.
right, so how much trauma they experience in their lifetime depends on kind of on that scale, if you wanted to adapt earthly scale into it. And then basically how quickly they overcome the trauma also depends on that generational scale, or that progression of the marking
Do
scale.
you think the younger, newer kids get over it faster, pass it faster,
Oh, so I can
or
speak.
have more trauma? I guess. Do you think the amount of trauma is going down over time? I guess
Well,
I do.
so just think. So I mean, we can speak from our personal experience, right? Aiden came in, his generation Z. He came into our personal unawareness, right? And then our personal unawareness basically started him off with very similar pattern as us onto what does it look like, both from his grandparents, from us, um, and then therefore onto him,
Yeah.
right? So he experienced, um, for sure, 10 years, if not 15 years, of full blown standard Earth operation from us,
Yeah.
right? So, um, maybe less than 15.
Probably 10 and some change.
Yeah, 10, maybe 11 or 12, right? So he has 10 years of that blind operation before awareness comes in. Now, I'm saying from us, but I think he has awareness all along the way. So, before 10, like his idea of awareness never actually left him, but he's just basically feels he's subject to the circumstance, right? And then at, let's say, 10 or 11, when you and I start actualizing into any form of awareness, um, then we basically start changing what is it that we put onto him as that ancestral pass through, right? So we're no longer dumping generationally, but honestly past life ish, right? Like,
Yeah.
just because it's not just generational. It's kind of like a whole
Yeah.
dump load.
In that sense, every next generation has an even bigger bag of shit that they're carrying, because it's all of their past lives plus all of their ancestors and all of their past lives, and it just multiplies.
Yeah, but right, you don't need. So when they this is what I want to say is, when people do the ancestral trauma healing or the family constellation, right? Maybe I said this before or not. Basically, what you're doing is you're allowing the pattern of your subconscious mind to become present, to become presently aware from this larger standpoint, right? And so what you're doing is you're actualizing. There's no actually anything that you need to release from grandma being raped or from grandfather going to World War II or whatever. That is not how it works. What you need to do is you need to actualize what is it that progressed and you picked up from this greater understanding of what it means to hold trauma and not be aware about it. And the only thing it is the exercise into awareness. That's all it is. It just gives you another platform to exercise awareness, right? But, that awareness is just a choice. And this is just like, oh, this is a different playground for me to play where I exercise awareness. So it's not that it's not beneficial. It's just that's what it is. When you actually see what a definition of a mother is or a definition of a father is, all it is like, oh, here's all the shit that I'm going to shield my son from. But the reality is the definition should be is, oh, look, here's the constitution of self that I'm bringing forth, then I'm not processing. And now I'm trying to somehow either overexpose or underexpose my children to. And that is what being a mother is. Right. So it's just the definition is the pain body.
I become a filter / amplifier for all the things that I
do or do not want,
all based on whatever trauma I happen to have growing up.
Yeah.
Which, isn't necessarily wrong in certain aspects of it. If, the last 5 generations of dads beat the moms, yes, you should end that, obviously. But you're right. It is less about the specifics of what it was and more about what you took out of it. What sunk into your psyche those first few years of your life.
Yeah. Right. And then, but again, definition. Because then that became your definition.
Yeah, it did.
Right. And so when you recognize, okay, the definition of a mother is a very large definition. Like,
right. It's not
just like this thing. Like, oh, well, how can I not identify as a mother? If you say that,
part of it is, and I'm going to include all these things from my mother, and I'm going to explicitly exclude all these things from my mother.
Right. Because, and so realize that the reason why you want a whole definition is you want to shield or protect or outdo all the stuff that is actually behind it. So the definition is the structure of your reality. It's where you were not loved, where you were not safe. You did not have anyone protect you. And then you did need an imaginary animal to make you feel safe in order to continue to exist as a child, because that was the only point of love and safety that you felt. Do you see what I mean? It's that deep. That is what father is. To you, that is what everything that father is, that you should be as a father. You're just trying to undo all the stuff. And so the reason why you're crying about it is because you have not let go of your child inside. I know you don't want to hear this. That holds that wishful thinking that I wish my life was different. You did not feel the pain. Because it fucking sucks ass. Of that.
Yeah.
And it's a lot. Like, right, remember, like I mentioned, it was just overwhelming. Yeah. So there's that. So just file it into like things I still need to. But yes.
That filing cabinet was full.
Right. And so that as you drop these definitions, these subconscious definitions that are actually there to propagate structure and propagate density, sooner or later, right, you just use them as springboards to just drop them and drop them and drop them.
Yeah.
And then at some point, then you reach this that peace and tranquility comes from the letting go of that density. And then if you just let go enough of that density, then you can start to experience this nimble sense of existence, right? Where sooner or later, the idea of like, wait, I identify as an earthen, and then therefore I'm from planet Earth, that within itself becomes a very nimble type of existence, right? Or like, oh, look, I identify as a Syrian, and then, and this is my set of definitions. You start to ascend and draw galactic interpretation of that reality.
Right.
Because each, with them, they are in a different density. And so then therefore the set of definitions that they're drawing in are not the clusterfuck shit of our pain body, but they're its own clusterfuck of shit of like, oh, here's what an experience of our culture is, or here's experience of our social norm is.
Yeah.
And so that is a different reality that they still choose to partake in, that still builds their definitional structure.
Right. Yeah,
Does that make sense?
it does. But even then, instead of, I am a Syrian, it's more, which is the same as I define myself as one or identify as one. It should be more like, I have this history, I have this, these traits or whatever, and those come along with experiences, and this come along with, beliefs and whatever. Uh, but that isn't who I am. That isn't the definition. Those are attributes
Well,
as opposed to definitions.
so I will, maybe this will help. This is the way they interpret it, right? So there's no actually such thing as a Syrian. You're using Syrian energy concepts. That's kind of how their dimensionality works, right? And so the way they interpret themselves, right? One, they are one with awareness of the source, right? Of the point of no, right? And so they actually in cognitive recognition that they are here to facilitate an experience or to have an experience of self, right? But then because they are aware of this greater, let's say, ether or fifth element or their spiritual nature of existence, right? Then one, they're not defined to any one planetary structure and any one definition, but they see themselves nimble within the concept of this is what our choice of incarnation represents as this lifetime or as this interpretation of reality. And then thus they progress through life without the definition of this is who I am, as opposed to this is how I use this moment to express life or to express divinity or to express the source or to express experience. Does that make sense? And so when you're on that scale, if you're on the scale, how can I better put this? There you go. If we go back to the sandbox theory, if the sand is being blown by the wind and it's this nimble form, and then you realize that through the nature of expression, then you can form the sand into a structure, and then you can charge it with energy, and then you can take that energy and then you can expand it. And then through that expansion, you can facilitate experience, right? If you stand there or if you sit there and you know how that feels, I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
You cannot dive into the depth of our definition. Our definition would be impossible to insert into their realm of dimensional structure.
Right. I mean, that makes sense.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. If you're in the middle, if you're in the middle of being in love, in real love, if you're in that mode, then the idea of, going off to argue about the election doesn't it doesn't even fit in.
Yeah, I
I
guess
mean,
that's
I'm trying to
no.
come up
I guess
with
that's an earthy
Yeah.
representation of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you are so if you go into the source, right? Obviously, within the source, we don't need to have this conversation at all. So we're let's say lower than there, right? We're somewhere else, because the goal of this podcast is for you to feel the extrapolation of this reality of all the frequencies, as opposed to just being in the source, right? So you're outside of the source, but you're not in the three-dimensional density, right? So we're talking about now somewhere in between, right? There you go. Pleiadians just specialize in this, right? If you're having a dance, right, and you are expressing God or spirit or creation through the interpretive dance of your reality, right? And imagine yourself, I don't know if maybe this is too feminine of an example, but imagine yourself dancing in connection to the oneness, in connection to the love. And the only thing that matters right now is the expression of yourself through this dance as as an offshoot, as a refractory nature of reality, right? If you're just dancing and then you're thinking about toothpaste or dishwashers or whatever, right? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
You cannot enter into toothpaste and
Right.
dishwashers because they don't make
If
sense.
you're, I mean, yeah, if you're in the middle of something that you love, that stuff it couldn't be further from your mind.
Yeah, but that point is the definition of a dishwasher almost cannot exist.
Right.
You can
There's no room for dishwashers and furnace filters when you are
but they
there.
can't hold density.
Right. No, I know what you mean.
Does that make sense? The density disappears when you start to hold a wider breadth of definition. So what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that we should be dropping definition, because we obviously want to continue to exist as a being in some form, whatever your choice of form is, in order to continue to have the experience. This is what this transitionary phase is we're not going into the source and we're disappearing, and then therefore we're at the point of tranquility and peace. That's not where this choice is, right? The choice, at least for me, is to continue to have this experience, but change the density thereof. So does that make sense? Is this a good wrap or?
No, it does make sense. I mean, that's my goal too.
Well, no, I'm not saying that should be anyone's goal.
No, I mean that's
The goal.
that sounds
Uh,
nice.
There are several. So right. So I heard people say, and this is maybe I should end it here, but I will go into this little side note here, not for too long. I heard people say like, oh, there's no such thing as a dimensional split. Like Earth is not splitting, Earth is not shifting. Well, there is such thing as defining your own parameters of the future. That is the truth, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
It's not right now. Like what I would say is, when everybody's saying that, everybody has been saying this to some extent for all eternity. So at all points, you are deciding your definition into now, and then thus that propagates the future. So when people are talking about the shift or the earth split or whatever, all that simply is you will have set of people or set of consciousness that choose to start to experience things differently than they were before.
Right.
And that can be said, if you want to look at Earth's linear history, about lifetimes and lifetimes of Earth linear histories.
All throughout history.
Yeah. So this time is not any different than the other time, except that at this point, there's a greater number of people who are choosing to participate in this movement than before.
I mean, this isn't exactly what you mean, but objectively, go back to, I don't know, 1,000 years ago, and the people in England were looking at their reality wildly different than the people in, I don't know, China.
Yeah.
They're both sets of people, and they're both going about their day, I don't know, farming or whatever you do 1,000 years ago.
Well, no, like a good example of this, like Annabelle is studying pilgrims and whatnot.
Yeah.
Right.
Their reality was wildly different than the Native Americans.
So that the shift in consciousness, right? Like that is a shift in consciousness for somebody to come from England and then go to a different country in order to seek freedom on the rudimentary level, right? On the rudimentary level, has a potentiality of something new. It has a potentiality of, here's the old and busted way, and we're going to come over here and set up the new hotness, right? The idea is already there. This is that same idea, except we're leveling up instead of, I don't know, tea time to, I don't know, Native American genocide. That's the difference.
the pilgrims are sold as coming over here for, all this freedom and stuff. But I think it was more like, oh, we're getting persecuted for our religious beliefs over there. So we're going to come over here, and then we'll be able to persecute anybody else who doesn't have our religious beliefs. And so they end up with these sects
I'm not.
of the Quakers and the whatever who didn't like anybody who didn't believe their thing, and would burn them at the stake.
Well, no, they came here for their freedom.
For their freedom, but at the same time, it turned into a.
But they never let go of the pain body associated with why they came here. So they came here for the freedom, like they came. Let's just be honest. It's the empire resistance victim mindset. They came here from that mindset and then instilled this mindset onto the new land. That's so. Yes, there's multitude of flaws, but what I'm saying is, in the shift of I am trying to seek freedom from something, you can actually seek awareness, as opposed to in their case, let's say there was lack of awareness, right? But the idea of shift, the idea of entering into a transitory phase of a shift, is not new. That's what I'm trying to say. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
People saying there's no such thing as a shift. No, but there's always an opportunity from the shift. Question is that a real shift, or is it just repivot into the same nature of the triangle? Are you retriangulating back into the, over there they were the victim, and then they were prosecuted for their religious beliefs, and they were going to come to America, and all of a sudden they were going to be the empire because now they're in charge. Right. But and then because they never let go of the triangle,
the natives are the resistance fighting them.
Yes,
so we need to eliminate them.
Well, no, west. To them, they didn't see themselves as the empire. They saw the natives as the empire, and then now they became the people, the resistance, because they never left the triangulation mindset.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So the shift is always at the precipice. Like quite literally, every single second is a precipice of a shift. So when people say there's no such thing as a shift, it's just bullshit. We're always at the precipice of the shift. The question is, are you willing to use this awareness as a bounce board and bounce out of the triangulation, or are you going to sink down lower and lower and lower? And right now, the scales are so vast to where it is super easy to see this triangulation. And that's the difference of where we're on the transitory phase of our solar system. It is very easy to see this triangulation that exists. And any one moment you can go, oh my gosh, it doesn't even matter what the story is. It's just all triangulation. Do you stay in there, or do you use it as a bounce board into awareness and then start to drop definition over and over and over and over? And when you start to drop those definitions, I'm a little bit elsewhere, but you will get to the point of this elsewhere, right? You will get to the point where all of a sudden enough of these bounces, and then all of a sudden you see yourself as completely something else.
You bounce higher and longer each time.
Yeah, right. And I don't, I'm not saying I'm not bouncing down, and I'm not in the transitory nature of my reality where hoodies are still triggering for me, right? But that bounce, that repetitive nature of the bounce out of the triangulatory nature allows me to then start to shift the perspective to where the definitions start to drop away. And when the definitions start to drop away, there's a very interesting nuance to where all of a sudden you're not looking from yourself from the bottom on up. You're seeing yourself from the standpoint of your truth, and everything else is just an interpretive nature of your reality. And that shift is, it really is magical. I don't know if how much time you spend in that shift, but it's just, that's where it's going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's just stop before I go on. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks for listening.